I've always been a big re-sign Torey Krug guy. I've always been in that camp throughout the season. I was totally for it, especially before COVID when the cap was going to probably go up. Hey, the Bruins have the cap space, re-sign the guy. He's a leader. He's dynamic on the offensive side of things, all that fun stuff. But I've been kind of getting a change of feeling lately. And this isn't even just from the comments made this past week. But, Bruins Stats tweeted out some stuff about how Krug really isn't potent 5-on-5. Most of his faceoffs from the offensive zone. He's somewhat sheltered. The Bruins don't have a lot of space. You also saw in the postseason, they didn't, Krug was good, not great, especially 5-on-5. I think he was on the ice for the most 5-on-5 goals allowed. Mm. You also look at their depth. You look at, defensively, they weren't super great. Maybe it is time to move on from Torey Krug. Maybe it's not the right – at this moment, I don't think it's a stupid thing to move on and invest that money in other places, not just one place.
Yeah, no. I mean, I think I'm kind of in the same boat now. If we're looking back at February when you think everything was normal, and the fact that, the cap was supposed to jump up anywhere from, I think, like 84 to 88.2 million. So, I mean, even if that's in between, the Bruins are looking pretty good, especially the fact that they cut all that, extra cap with David Backes, moving most of his money off the books. You saved about a million with, the Heinen Ritchie trade, which that would have been at least one caveat out of the way that trade kind of mapped out. And then even I think, they were getting Bolesky's deferred money off the books. They were getting the final hit of Seidenberg's buyout off the books. They were looking pretty good. They could have legitimately added another piece or two just through free agency without really having to take a long look at a guy like Krug, who's kind of the biggest, shoot or drop this offseason. But now you look at it, they're dealing with that. You look at the way this window of this team is all right, if Krug walks, there's some things you have to address, right? Obviously in the locker room, he's a key piece on that team, as kind of that bridge in between, that veteran core and this, growing pool of younger players like McAvoy and, Grzelcyk, DeBrusk, all those guys. He's very key in that room as being kind of that, the first guy you go and talk to. I think he mentioned once that, it's sometimes these rookies or younger guys come in all right, do I go up to Zdeno Chara after no media asks him a question, and ask him something? Or do I talk to Torey Krug, who's 28, 29, a little bit easier to connect to, kind of a guy like that who still has been in the league for a long time. So, losing him in that regard, is a hit. But I mean, you still got that franchise, kind of those cornerstones in that dressing room. You still got, guys like Coyle and Corrali and Wagner is kind of that new kind of bridge, in between those kind of groups. But I think you look at the other areas of, where you can improve and where you can kind of keep moving on without Krug. I think the power play, you're still going to have a pretty solid, good, probably great power play, right? Where you still got those pieces up front. You put in Matt Grzelcyk in that role, who may not be as dynamic, but even if he kind of keeps it simple there and he's just, on the blue line, recovering pucks, getting to loose pucks, sending them back, down to Marchand or Bergeron or something like that. He's a guy who also has improved in his shot quite a bit. So, he's not he's not going to be a threat from, the high slot, firing shots. I think, you can still draw without him. I think the biggest challenge is just finding a top four guy that can at least log, 20 minutes, and at least give you something. As you said, I think, 5-on-5 play, which is where they really have to improve. Krug really wasn't as dynamic as, clearly not as much on the power play, but you just need a guy like Krug who can, play 20 minutes capably, because I don't think you can go into next year expecting, we'll just put in John Moore or something like that. We'll put in, maybe Urho Vakanainen's ready, which doesn't seem like he is. So.
Urho get in the lineup. I mean,
yeah,
you're right. And it's funny you mentioned the power play with Grzelcyk compared to Krug. Now, granted, 5-on-5. Bruins Stats tweeted this. power play, Grzelcyk and Pasta, only, again, 72 minutes, time on ice. Goals for over 60 of 12.3. Krug and Pastrnak without Grzelcyk, obviously a lot more time. Goals for over 60 of 10.3. So to me, you add all those in. You also add in the fact that Krug's contract is not going to be like 4 years again. They're not going to get away with giving this guy another 4-year deal. This guy wants to cash in, and he's right. He should cash in. I think Krug absolutely 100% deserves a long-term deal. I just don't think it's in the Bruins' best interest to do that or to be that team. I think that's for a team like the Red Wings. I think that's going to be the team that ultimately scoops them up. But you're going to have that deal for 8, let's say 7 or 8 years. Get that deal for that amount of time. As we're seeing now, and a big topic obviously is this veteran core. Your Krejcis, your Bergerons, your Marchands, your Charas, your Rasks don't have a lot of time left. We thought Chara was done. Now I guess he isn't. Yeah. But you have a limited window. I would say about maybe 2, potentially 3 years with Bergeron, Krejci at least as your centerman. After that, what is your future? We'll get later in the show. We'll get to the younger guys sort of hitting their, when they're going to kind of start to come through. But if you're rebuilding or retooling in 4 to 5 years, and you still have an 8-year, $8 million deal from Torey Krug on your contract, on your books, who's 34, 35 years old, I mean, you're not going to want that. Like that, we're going to look back and go, especially if they don't win a cup. Like if let's say they re-signed him to an 8-year, $8 million deal. And they don't win the cup with him, then it's like, well, this was a bust. What was the point of this?